Somebody said, oh, I didn't come here because I want to hear about money. I came here because I need some peace. Well, honey, you need some money or you ain't gonna never know no peace.
Since starting this megachurch series, we've covered several megachurch pastors, including scandals, controversies, and why they are hated overall. However, of all the evangelical hustlers profiting from their huge flock of members, few cast a shadow as messy as Creflo Dollars. Besides the otherwise obvious lies of his prosperity gospel, this is a preacher who has gone to jail during his pastoral career and has clips upon clips of sermons that will make Jesus cringe. Well, don't just take our word for it. Let's find out just how deep the rot goes. Bling bling ka-ching! The gospel according to Creflo Dollar. Creflo Dollar is the founder and the head pastor of World Changers Church International, a megachurch out of College Park, Georgia. He also heads several other affiliated organizations, including Arrow Records, Creflo Dollar Ministries, and Creflo Dollar Ministerial Association. By his organization alone, he sounds like a man of means, and boy is he! The preacher is a controversial figure for his brand of prosperity gospel, which sells the idea that physical health and material wealth are based on God's designs. As a result, believers could improve their outcomes in either category through faith and, more importantly, good old-fashioned greenbacks. For all his troubles spreading the version of misaligned gospel, Dollar is quite the wealthy man, with some estimates putting his net worth at around $27 million. Pairing this eye-watering amount are pricey possessions, including a choice 53-acre mansion and 182.9-acre country residence and other multi-million-dollar residences across Manhattan, New Jersey, and Atlanta. A man that much dough deserves to ride in class, and Dollar buys into the sentiment, riding around in a Rolls-Royce Phantom and flying on a $65 million Gulfstream G650, which was easily the best private aircraft available at the time of its purchase. Like other prosperity gospel preachers, Dollar's lavish lifestyle is shrouded in the belief that it's untaxed ministerial earnings that have helped the preacher purchase those fancy custom suits and drip he so loves. The lack of transparency about his finances certainly hasn't helped overturn this popular sentiment. Scandals and controversies. Where do we begin? Creflo Dollar has been catching flack for years, not just in the United States alone. For instance, there's a letter from a Scottish church stating that he isn't welcome in the country. And when he ministered in Kenya, public opinion was torn between his adherents and critics about some of his teachings. Anyway, we haven't got all the videos, so we'll just focus on the biggest scandals Dollar has been involved in.
A well-known pastor of a sprawling megachurch says police got it wrong. He did not punch or choke his teenage daughter. Creflo Dollar is charged with child cruelty, family violence, and simple battery.
In 2012, the Dollar's household's dirty liens were washed in public after the preacher was carted away by the police for a call made by his 15-year-old daughter. Although there's no public knowledge as to how or why the situation escalated into domestic abuse, the backstory was that Dollar and his daughter had an argument. She wanted to attend a party, but he wouldn't let her. When she tried walking away after saying she didn't want to talk anymore, the preacher grabbed his daughter by the throat, choked her briefly, then shoved her to the ground before proceeding to punch and beat her with a shoe. Dollar's arrest detailed simple battery and cruelty to children before he was released on a $5,000 bond. A few days after his arrest, the pastor declared to his massive congregation that he neither choked nor punched his daughter, and his arrest was wrongful. Instead, he blamed the devil for trying to discredit him and said all was well with the Dollar household before likening his troubles to those of the Apostle Paul.
The truth is, she was not choked. She was not punched. There were not any scratches on her neck. But the only thing on her neck was a prior skin abrasion from eczema.
The worst part was Dollar's congregation swallowing his side of the story hook, line, and sinker without considering the possibility that his 15-year-old might be telling the truth, even with an eyewitness account from Dollar's other 19-year-old daughter. Financial transparency. 5 years before nearly separating his child's consciousness from her body, in 2007, Creflo Dollar and 5 other televangelists were the subject of a financial investigation by the Senate Finance Committee under the chairmanship of Iowa Republican Senator Charles Grassley. The committee requested documents from the Dollars on the grounds that taxpayers should be assured that their donations are being used for the tax-exempt purposes of the organization. The documents requested were data on executive compensation, audited financial statements for World Changers, the church's real and personal assets, and information about related for-profit and non-profit entities. Over 3 years later, the committee has made little to no headway. It was eventually disbanded after an outcry from Dollar's mentor and fellow evangelical hustler, Kenneth Copeland. Before pulling back, though, the committee was vocal about most of the ministries being unwilling to engage in the accountability or transparency process, with Dollar deemed the least cooperative of the bunch. Since the preacher was unwilling to budge, the committee wound up piecing together a puzzle of his finances through publicly available documents, news reports, and third parties. Their findings showed that World Changers had collected $69 million in contributions through its Atlanta church alone, as well as the 2 multi-million-dollar homes in Dollar's possession in Georgia, as well as church and other business entities, and the 4 aircraft flown for personal use. The committee concluded that the different business entities Dollar was involved in, including private airports and aircraft leasing companies, raised red flags about the possibility that the church's tax-exempt status was being used to avoid taxation. The G650 scandal. If Creflo Dollar's other shenanigans flew under the radar, it was this very controversy that put him on the map. In 2015, the preacher said he was believing God for a new plane. A $65 million plane, a Gulfstream G650. He even put out a video in March soliciting donations from friends from around the world to help replace his 1984 Gulfstream G1159A, which he deemed unusable due to age. This had left Dollar and his staff flying commercial, and he was desperate for a change. As you'd expect, this news was met with uproar on social media and became a recurring subject on the airways as media outlets covered the story en masse. Following the uproar, the video and fundraiser information were promptly discontinued, but there was still an avenue for donations to come in via the church's gift page. Addressing the criticisms in a later sermon, Dollar declared, "The critics don't know what we do. That's why they asked the question, what does a preacher need with an airplane? If you knew what we did, then you wouldn't ask that question. Just because the world doesn't have to doesn't mean that you can't." He went as far as saying that the devil was trying to discredit him. In his words, "The devil thinks I got to discredit that man before he starts showing people Jesus." Dollar preaches to loud applause.
We point our Uzis right at all those non-tithing members because we want God to come to church. And at the count of 3 Jesuses, we shoot them all dead.
If you're still on the fence about Creflo Dollar, perhaps this sermon of his will help change your mind. Speaking to his congregation about giving, Dollar revealed that many people were allowed in the church that day because of grace through Jesus' blood, which speaks for them. That left for him, without said grace, he'd install turnstiles at the entrances of the church and issue tithe cards. So only people who pay their tithes would be granted entry upon swiping said card. Those who didn't would be tackled and rounded up by security, escorted to the back, separated from their consciousness by Uzi-wielding ushers, and buried in a mass grave. What a sermon! Glory, hallelujah! New Creflo Dollar or same old scam? 2 years ago, sometime in late June 2022, Creflo Dollar shocked the world with his opening confession in the sermon titled The Great Misunderstanding. After years of shoving the same prosperity gospel down the throats of listeners, he had suddenly done a 180 in tithing. His reasoning was almost too sound for the kind of drivel, hustler gospel that he's preached for decades now, stating that tithing is Old Testament teaching and is no longer pertinent for New Testament believers. Although the jury is still split on the relevance and importance of tithing, Dollar appears to have taken a stance. He began his sermon as follows.
I want to start off by saying to you that I'm still growing, and that the teachings that I've shared in times past on the subject of tithing were not correct. And today I stand in humility to correct some things that I've taught for years and believed for years, but could never understand it clearly.
He also said, I won't apologize because if it weren't for me going down that route, I would have never ended up where I am right now. But I will say that I have no shame at all saying to you, throw away every book, every tape, and every video I did on the subject of tithing unless it lines up with this. He referenced Romans 6:14 as a reason for his newfound revelation and stance, hammering on grace, superseding the law of the Old Testament. For sin shall no longer be your master, because you are not under the law, but under grace. While that might seem like the step in the right direction for the preacher for the first time in decades, it's only fair that we ask if this is a genuine turnaround or just a build-up to another scheme. Even though he went on to encourage members to dispose of his previous books and recordings carrying this wrong message, he made no effort to return the cost of those memorabilia to the members he shook down. That said, he continues to lead a lavish lifestyle, so maybe he's changed, maybe he hasn't, only time will tell. Dollar has been the subject of criticism for promoting the prosperity gospel, a subject he's mostly avoided addressing. However, it became blatantly obvious in 2015 when he posted on Facebook, "Jesus bled and died for us so that we can lay claim to the promise of financial prosperity. Prosperity in Christ, #wealthy living, #abundant life." The criticisms and mockery came in thick and fast, such that the post was taken down soon afterwards. But the preacher still didn't address the situation. Then in 2022, after making a U-turn on his stance on tithing, many figures within and outside the faith called him out on his empty words. The best of the bunch was Pastor Michael Clayton Harris, a preacher with the First Baptist Church of Passtown, who wasn't sold on the new Creflo Dollar. Pastor Harris took to Facebook to call out the prosperity preacher, writing, "Until #Creflo Dollar has a Zacchaeus spirit, which involves giving the people a refund of all the tapes, videos, books, and other materials they bought from him, I'm not moved by his new revelation on tithing that is still flawed. It's flawed because #Jesus Christ used the law in his teachings. For example, in Matthew 4, 7, and 10, whenever Jesus said, 'It is written,' that was the law being used to combat the temptations of the devil. #sound doctrine, #study to show thyself approved." But the ante was significantly upped by Creflo Dollar's spiritual son joining the conversation to call out a spiritual father via TikTok.
You didn't take ownership throughout the message. It was what the churches did and what they said, and they said this and they said, no, you said these things. You said, will a man rob God? You made us feel ashamed and guilty for that. You made us feel ashamed and fearful that if we didn't tithe, we were going to be cursed. You made us feel like that.
Now we want to know from you, what did Creflo Dollar do to make you dislike him? Do you think he really changed? Let us know in the comments section below. And before you go, check out the next video at the end screen or check out the channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.